I'm holding a spooky sign, which means it must be time for my 2025 Great Big Fat Spooky Season reading list. Oh yes. Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Sinead and this is my spooky corner of YouTube where I talk about the spooky books that I've read, the spooky films that I've watched, and the spooky things that I get up to in my day-to-day life. Not gonna lie to you, there's a lot of hauntings that don't make the cut. October is finally here, which means there can be no more putting it off. It is time to embrace spooky season and start reading the books that are going to put us absolutely in the mood for a sumptuous Halloween. Whether you want cute and cozy books that will warm your tiny little pumpkins, or you want seasonal scares that will chill you as we creep ever closer to All Hallows Eve. So I have scoured my library, I've gone through my reading list, and I have scoured other people's libraries. In fact, I went into a couple of haunted libraries and risked life and limb in there, and some other people's limbs as well, in order to bring you a great big list of books that I've read and would recommend, but also some other titles out there that might tingle your fancy, tickle your skeleton, make your pumpkins grow larger. What? I didn't prepare any of these puns, they're just off the fly. Hone in your harvest. Why did that come out of my mouth? But before we get to the books, I need to share with you some words about this video's sponsor, and it is a spooktacular one. You guys clearly love spooky books as much as I do, but I'm gonna bet that occasionally some of you are partial to a cozy spooky game. And this October you are in for a treat because June's Journey is celebrating its Spookyversary. June's Journey is a hidden object and mystery game set in the 1920s where you get to step into the glamorous world of amateur detective June Parker. It's your job to find the clues that might solve the mystery of the death of June's sister, as well as solving fun puzzles and exploring glamorous locations. You also get to unleash your creativity in this game by decorating and customizing your island. June's Journey turns 8 this year and there is a huge Spookyversary planned for the whole of October. There are going to be special events, extra Halloween surprises, interactive community challenges, and there is a new spooky mystery to solve left by June herself 100 years ago. But what I am really excited for this October is the fact that you can customize and decorate your island with new Halloween themed decorations. Inspired by the spooky season and Gothic elegance, you can transform your island into a haunted Halloween fantasy. Building a Gothic Halloween island and solving mysteries? Yes, please. If you like the sound of a cozy hidden object game with a mystery to solve and Halloween decor, then October is definitely the time to embark on June's Journey. Download the game now and celebrate the Spookyversary. Use the QR code shown on screen or go to the link in my description to unlock exclusive content and happy hauntings. I love spooky season. I love October. It is my time. It is the time we are celebrating Halloween. It is the time where we can all be very gothy and weird and embrace all of the horror films, all of the horror books, and no one judges you. October begins and so does the hunt for the ultimate spooky, creepy, seasonal reads that people want to indulge in. It's not necessarily terrifying books and straight up ghostly books, but a lot of people want to encapsulate that feeling of autumn, of fall, of all of the Halloween vibes that aren't necessarily scary, but give you a spooky, warm feeling in book form. I've got a big stack of books that I've read and also a list of books that I haven't gotten round to, but seem to fit the season very well, and I want to share those recs with you. The common thread for all of these book recommendations is there's got to be some sort of link that the book either feels autumnal or suitable for October, or it's got a direct reference to Halloween in it. My hope is that you will find at least one book on this list that you will enjoy, whether it's giving you that cozy, warm Halloweeny feeling, or it's giving you the frights and terrors that you and your therapist should be talking about. Hi, just jumping in here, Sinead from the editing room, the editing goblin, that's what she calls me. It's me. Sinead has a habit of babbling away and forgetting key things that she had written down to say because she gets very excited when talking about books. When it comes to what I am reading this year myself for spooky season, you can check out my video all about that. It details the big fat TBR that I am hoping to get through by the end of October. There's some gems on there. Those are all the books that I have not yet read. So if you want even more recommendations of spooky season books based on what I am going to try and read this year, check that video out. And according to the list that she makes me write and then I read out and it becomes very meta, we've also got plans for doing a spooky season watch guide. So the films that you should watch, maybe the TV series from cozy to scary for this season. And we've also got some spooky season activities planned, maybe involving pumpkins, maybe involving tarot cards, maybe some spooky trips, visiting spooky locations and doing spooky shit there. Everybody loves that. So if you want to know everything that I'm going to be recommending and I'm up to this spooky season, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, hit the bell so you can be reminded of the latest recommendations when they come out. Time to scuttle back to my desk, back to the other me. Let's get to it. I'm going to recommend some classics that you can start with, but also updates of these classics if you have already read them or you feel like you're not ready to tackle those yet. A recommendation for 2025 is rereading Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I will be dipping into this book again. I read it at university. I read many of the Gothics at university and when I was younger, but I do want to revisit them. This October is the perfect time to read it because Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Frankenstein will be coming out very soon. This has got a great cast. It looks brilliant from the trailers. Apparently the adaptation is very faithful. I just can't wait for it. I love Guillermo del Toro, so it's a good time to revisit that fantastic story. If you'd like a modern twist on Frankenstein, there are two books I can recommend. One is Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill. A book that I started and still need to finish, but this is a queer update of Frankenstein, a retelling, a reimagining, and the vibes are spectacular. There's also a book that's just come out by the brilliant author Kylene Bayron, who writes fantastic YA horror that has great representation through it. Make Me a Monster was due to be released on the 30th of September, and it is Frankenstein inspired, involving a young girl who is working at a mortuary. The author has also retold other horror stories and fairy tales in the past, so they are well worth checking out. October is a great time to read any of the Gothic classics because you're going to get all of the feels, shall we call it, all of that great aesthetic of cobbled streets, of misty cities, of a touch of darkness and the seasons changing, no bright blaring light from the sunshine, no, we are slipping into darkness, and with the dark changing of the season comes dark deeds. Which is why I think it's a very good time to read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. A short book all about the duality of man, about dark anatomy, about dark studies, about morality, about how you wrestle with your conscience and what you want to unleash and what you keep inside. It is a moody, atmospheric book that bears rereading even if you have read it in the past. And it's very short as well. You will get through it pretty quickly, and I feel it's quite accessible. It has all of that wonderful aesthetic, and it's very contemplative as well. You will be sat probably wondering about the whole idea of duality, of the wrestling between the Doctor and Mr. Hyde, about what Stevenson was trying to say there. I've done a short video recently about one of the funnier stories that inspired him to write that tale, the story of Deacon Brodie, but there's all sorts of different moral messages all the way through it. It is such a wonderful book, and I think great for the autumn. And if you want a retelling or a reimagining of this story, definitely check out Hyde by Craig Russell. This book takes the story of Jekyll and Hyde and makes it a lot bigger. It turns it into a mystery, a murder mystery. It's a detective story. It becomes a story of cults and rituals. Craig Russell writes very rich, quite complex books, and he can be a little bit difficult to get into because there's so much going on in his mind and there's a lot of great imagery that's conjured in there. Hyde is absolutely dripping with that Gothic aesthetic and turns it into a much bigger story. So do check it out, and if you've read it, let me know what you think in the comments. Dracula is another classic Gothic novel that I feel is pretty easy to get through because it's an epistolary novel. It is quite accessible, and again, it has all of those wonderful Gothic vibes to it. I'd also recommend, as I have done many times before, checking out Anno Dracula by Kim Newman. It takes the idea of Dracula and poses the question, what if Dracula had won? It involves lots of fictional characters, of real life characters in this Victorian setting around the time of Jack the Ripper. It is lusciously indulgent and just perfect to read around spooky season. What is a classic story that really does scream Halloween? I'd argue it's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Oh, the macabre story of the Headless Horseman and how he tormented Ichabod Crane. The story of storytelling, of legend, and of pumpkins. Pumpkins are in this. Do go read the original short story by Washington Irving. Watch the film, the Tim Burton film, because all of the feels there. And for a twist on the original tale, I'd recommend Christina Henry's story, Horseman. The book is set 20 years after the events of Sleepy Hollow, and the people of Sleepy Hollow living with the legend and the lore around it, and everyone being a bit skeptical. It has a great protagonist, 14-year-old Ben, who was born a girl but identifies as a boy and is struggling to be accepted by his family and by the people around him. But then the body of a headless child is found in the woods, and suddenly the legend of Sleepy Hollow becomes very real. And also, is the Horseman as terrifying and as dark as originally suggested? The atmosphere of this book is spot on, a really good update of the story and an interesting twist on the original legend. Do check it out. And while we're on the subject of classics and modern classics, you can't really have October and Halloween without a little Shirley Jackson in there. Of course, if you want the ultimate haunted house story, then read The Haunting of Hill House, a very, very frightening, very strange, wonderfully constructed story of a haunted house. But my personal favourite for this time of year is We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This story of a family, a possibly murderous family, a family with a dark past, with secrets who are strange in this big rambling house, of people who show up at the door with good intentions and tall tales and stories. It's a story of betrayal, it's a story of duplicity, and blackberries. Blackberries are completely autumnal. You gotta go blackberry picking at this time of year. So for me, yeah, that wins. That it elevates it up. You can fight me on it, I don't mind. And now we come to a very special segment, Cozy October. Something about October, I fall into every cliche, and I am looking for books that are snuggly, that have baking, that have a lot of pumpkins in it, and the spice that goes with it. Hey, all kinds of spice, maybe. No, that's a bad joke. I want witches, I want cute towns, I want leaves falling, I want there to be a touch of magic in the air, and magic of the season pouring through those pages. And I discovered there are quite a few books that fall into that category out there in the world. Here are my personal recommendations first. If you want the feeling of Gilmore Girls in a spooky witchy book, then it has to be Cackle by Rachel Harrison. It's a story of Annie who's been dumped by her longtime boyfriend. She moves to a village in upstate New York, an adorable, charming village, and she meets the beautiful, beguiling Sophie. Sophie, who the rest of the locals feel a little bit shifty around. They say that she is a strange woman, she has powers, and she lives in this lavish home. And yes, she does have a profound effect on Annie. Annie starts to find her own power, but there is darkness underneath it. This book is funny, it is light, it is cozy, and it's got just enough scares in it to keep it in that horror category and without it going into too twee a territory. Though there's nothing wrong with twee at this time of year. There is something in this book that is, I can only describe it as autumnal crack. It just ticks every box and gives you those warm fuzzy feelings with some scary moments in there. If you're in the mood for witches but more of a fantasy setting but hyper cozy, then I would recommend The House Witch. This is a series of books and it is so cute and so lovely to sink into. It is the story of a male house witch who comes to a castle, comes to a kingdom, and his job is to take over the kitchen, and he can use his secretive spells to make the food, make this incredible food, keep everything tidy. He's got a little black cat as a familiar. There is a love story entwined in there. There's intrigue and things going on in the kingdom. But for cozy fantasy, where it's low stakes but high vibes, it's such an adorable series of books. A book I read at the start of this year, Homicide at the Haunted House, is a very cute, cozy paranormal mystery about a young woman who ends up moving to Nightmare in Arizona. She ends up stuck there and she has to get a job at the local haunted house attraction. But then she finds out the haunted house attraction may not be an attraction, it might actually be real. But then there's a murder. Great spooky vibes, great paranormal mystery, loved it. There's more books in this series, easy to consume, and available on Kindle Unlimited. And the hair starts to fall over. The latest book by Sangu Mandana I have just started listening to, The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. This author also wrote The Very Secret Society for Irregular Witches, and you've got the same cozy feels in their next book. You've got a witch who is trying to find her powers running a magical inn, and she runs in with a magical historian, and there's a talking fox, and there's cute characters. It's just coziness in a big old mug. Now, you may like a cozy book, but you may also like a little spice with that coffee and that cake. Last month I listened to Best Hex Ever by Nadia El Fassi, and she does write cozy, spooky books that have spice in them. Best Hex Ever was adorable. I started this not realizing how spicy it got. You can see I'm already aflutter. It's the story of a young witch and her wonderful group of friends. She's going to a friend's wedding. She has had bad luck in relationships in the past because she feels that a hex was put on her by one of her exes. But then she meets a new gorgeous man. We get his narrative too through the story, and they fall for each other, and it's all about, is the hex going to be broken? Are they going to get together? It's very cute, really nice witchy vibes at the start of the book, and then the spice kicks in, and the spice is spicing. The spice was, I was going, oh my, while listening to this, while walking down the street, like, oh my goodness. A really cute book, very well delivered. I know cozy, spooky books are very popular and people are always asking me for recommendations. So I've got a list of books here that I searched for that came up under Halloween, autumnal, cozy, spooky that I think will fit the bill if that's what you're after. I haven't read any of these books yet, so I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of each of them. Love's a Witch, a recent book by Trisha O'Malley. It's got 4.15 on Goodreads. A reluctant witch returns to her Scottish hometown, which happens to be the most magical town in Scotland in this book, to break her family's curse. But sparks fly when she clashes with the town's grumpy mayor. Together, they may discover that love is the most powerful magic of all. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Something's Witchy by Sierra Spencer, which has 4.01 on Goodreads. When mortals begin vanishing in Grove Meadow, witchy cafe owners Carolina and Camilla Castillo team up with a skeptical detective to stop a dark force while keeping their coffee shop running. Together, they must clear their names before the town's magic turns deadly. I like this. I wrote these down quickly, but I'm sort of absorbing them again while reading them out loud and going, oh, I love that. This one is described as, if Halloween Town was a Hallmark movie with spice. It's For the Love of Fritters and Frights by J.D. Linton. It has 4.05 on Goodreads. A vampire innkeeper's plans for love get complicated when a charming witchy newcomer arrives in town. Hallow Falls is obsessed with Halloween, leading to a fake dating pact that stirs up unexpected feelings during a Halloween season full of magic and mischief. Spicy. This one may be cozy adjacent because it's described as The Silence of the Lambs meets Labyrinth, which is the mashup that all of us need. The title's confusing because it's Salem's Fall by Rektok Ross. Now, there are many books. There's another book that's called Salem's Fall. There's various books that feature Salem's Fall as a town. Is it a real town? I actually haven't looked that up. This has 3.71 on Goodreads. A brilliant young attorney must defend a dangerously charming billionaire accused of murdering his fiancée, only to uncover dark secrets and whispers of ritualistic murders in a small New England town, plus the risk of falling for her client. Oh, she's at risk of falling for a client. I wrote that so well. As Halloween nears, the case threatens not just her career, but her life. That's a handful of the cozy books that I found online. I'm sure there is a multitude more out there. You can drop them in the comments, and do let me know if you like me giving recommendations that I haven't necessarily read, but I've found for you, and their ratings. Happy to take feedback on it. Back to my recommendations, my friend. Let's get on to some witches for October. One book that is mentioned every single time there is a roundup of spooky season books, of October books. One of the ultimate recommendations for a witch book, and I would recommend people try it. It is Slewfoot by Brom. It is set in the 1600s. You have a puritanical town and a young woman who is fighting to keep hold of her farm, of her property, following the death of her husband, and the various men of the town who want to just take all her stuff away because it's very easy to say, well, you're getting uppity, young woman. I know, let's call her a witch. At the same time as hearing her story, we also have the story of Slewfoot, the creatures and the spirits and the demons of the land around this town. They're waking up and whispering to each other about what needs to be done to reclaim the land, and who could they join forces with to try and get one over on the nasty people who want to take away all of their legacy. You can listen to the audiobook of Slewfoot, but the physical copy has some wonderful illustrations by the author Brom all the way through it to really bring it to life. Slewfoot is beloved by many people. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, as I think some of the narrative threads were a little bit lost. It's an entertaining, if a little broad, snapshot of that period of history, of the famous time when the witch trials were at their full force and you had the patriarchal system of the country, of everything, being able to wield its power in the most devastating ways against women, actually against anyone who crossed them. And the folklore elements were original and very interesting, and some very striking imagery in there, and it builds to a very satisfying climax. I will say the end of this book, yes, you will feel very, very happy about it. Two books by Alexis Henderson you might consider at this time. You have The Year of the Witching, if you want to stay with witches and the really kind of dark folk horror and a lot of really great world building. The story of a young woman who is trying to sort of suppress her past, her links to witchcraft in a town that is overseen by a tyrannical lord and a figure of the church, and who is wielding his power in the most horrific ways, and the rising up of the witches of old, of the land around them. Really good take on the folklore and very atmospheric. Another book by Alexis Henderson that I would definitely recommend for this time of year is House of Hunger. This is her take on vampires in this very lavish, almost steampunk kind of world that she's created. You have noble families in the north of the country in which it's set who feed off the blood of their blood maids. They have servants that they drink the blood of. So it's a twist on vampire lore. And we have this young woman who is fleeing her horrific home life and gets employed as a blood maid. So she is thrust into this opulent world of the noble families, of serving as a blood maiden, of having this incredible tie to her mistress, but also hearing the stories of the other blood maids around her and realizing what might be going on underneath all of the extravagance, all of the extravagant lifestyle, and all of the opulence for which she's becoming accustomed, but there's a true darkness underneath it all. Dripping with atmosphere, and as I said, the world building in this was so evocative for quite a short book overall. I absolutely loved it, and I would escape into that world again and again if I could. A very recent read for me, but I think is perfect for this time of year. It's The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Now, I'd also recommend Mexican Gothic by this author. A great, great, great story and a really good Gothic tale. But The Bewitching is the story of 3 different women across 3 different timelines, and about the bewitching that stalks them. In this book, witches are not nice. Not nice. You have a story from the early 1900s of a young woman who is seeing her family sort of fall apart because of a curse that appears to have been placed on them, and a very sort of dark romance undercurrent that is occurring in that timeline. You have a story in the 1930s of a woman who would later become a very well-known horror writer, documenting the disappearance of her dear friend, someone that she was in love with. And then you have a modern story, or a story that's set in the 90s, of a young woman descended from the woman in the early 1900s, researching the horror writer and what really happened with the disappearance. There are some really good scenes set around Halloween in this book, so that's why it makes the list, but it's got a wonderful feel to it. You've got dark academia in there because the student in the 1990s is studying in Boston, and you've got all of that autumnal feel, all of the crunchy leaves and the old world, and you've also got these wonderful stories of witchcraft and mystery and intrigue in there. I think this is an incredibly atmospheric book, and I think very well executed. Now let's dive into true seasonal scares. We're talking Halloween themed books, or with a really, really strong Halloween connection, or a connection to the harvest to this time of year, or just something that just screams autumn over and over again. It simply isn't Halloween with a little bit of Ray Bradbury. If you've never discovered Ray Bradbury's works, whether it's his short stories, whether it's his novels, this is a great time to dip your toe in and sample some. Now, Ray Bradbury, there are many, many collections of his short stories, and that might be a great place to start. But 2 of his tales that are built for Halloween, because they're all around Halloween, one is The Halloween Tree. This is a shorter one. I guess this could be classed as a novella, but it's a story of 8 boys who will go hunting for their lost friend, their friend who disappeared, and they go looking for him on Halloween night, and they come across this character in this huge Gothic mansion. Yes, there are pumpkins glowing and candles, and this character will take them on a journey through time and space, almost, but on a journey to find their friend. It is such an atmospheric tale that screams Halloween, a wonderful one to get into for the season. And you've also got Something Wicked This Way Comes, the story of a very strange, there's words to describe it, carnival that comes to town around Halloween time. A new audio version of Something Wicked This Way Comes has just been released, so I will be settling down with that for sure in October, with a big mug of something to calm my nerves. Probably be whiskey, entirely whiskey. Let's talk about The Harvest. Harvest Home is a book that has been recommended to me many, many times, and I have got it downloaded and I have not read it yet, but I will be getting through it this October. This is a very famous story that was written in the 70s. There were adaptations done of it, and it's one that everyone mentions. If you want a Halloween, creepy, folk horror tale. The synopsis is simply about a family who have decided to move from New York to this lovely village, idyllic, lovely place that seems a wonderful place for their children to grow up in and for them to settle down and enjoy the scenery. Yeah, you just know bad stuff's going to go down there. Maybe the locals are a little bit too attached to the old ways. If you like your harvests dark, then try Dark Harvest. This was a novella that I read a couple of years ago, and I was so impressed by it. It did have a film adaptation of it, which is not bad at all, but the book is decidedly creepy. It's about a small town's seasonal ritual every Halloween about choosing the October Boy in this very strange, quite upsetting ritual involving them running and racing things. And there are shocking secrets revealed about what is behind this practice. It was fine as a book overall, but that story at the heart of it, really chilling and unsettling. Two other books that are on my TBR but also are labelled as very good for this time of year. One is my recent purchase, The Babysitter Lives by Stephen Graham Jones. Stephen Graham Jones, one of our great horror writers. You have a babysitter who is looking after two twins the night before Halloween, and the twins really want to show the babysitter their spooky costumes, and she's had some traumas in the past and then weird stuff starts happening in the house. Peak Halloween content. And in Stephen Graham Jones's hands, you know it's going to be good. I've also started reading an arc of the Autumn Springs retirement home Massacre. Yes, this is a slasher set in a retirement home, and our heroine, Ruth, is a woman in her 70s, and she is not to be messed with. This has got some very gory scenes in it. I've only just started it, but it does apparently, the action ramp up towards some activity around Halloween. And it's got autumn in the title, so this just felt like a good choice. I may find out it has nothing Halloweeny to it at all, and I may fling it across the room and return to it in November. I reserve that right. And now some of my personal favourite books to read at this time of year that I will always recommend. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it a million times over. The September House is a great autumnal read. I know September has passed us now, but this is still a great atmospheric book and one of the best haunted house books that I have ever read. It is the story of a woman, a middle-aged woman, who has been living in a haunted house for several years, and as we start the book, she is completely aware that this house is horrifically haunted and things really ramp up every September. But she doesn't want to give up her dream home. She's not moving out, but her husband has decided he's had enough and is no longer in the home. So her daughter starts asking questions. Where's Dad? I'm going to come down and sort all this out and we'll find him. And the mother is obviously going, oh God, you're going to walk into this house and see all of the hauntings. But are the hauntings real? What is behind them? It is a rich, brilliant story that I found very affecting and very well executed, has some genuinely scary moments in there, and is all set around autumn. A great read. What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher is a retelling, a reimagining of the fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. The setting of this book is Gothic, it is moody, it feels desperately autumnal and dark and windy and misty. It just screams just those autumnal vibes. Not only does this book have great atmosphere, it's also a really good twist on the original story of the House of Usher. It's witty, it's funny, it has really good characters all the way through it, and it's got elements of folk horror that still give me the chills when I think back to certain passages. A short book and the first in the Sworn Soldier series, the third book has just been published and I have a copy of it on my shelf. I really enjoy this series and I think it's great for this time of year. My love for Laura Purcell's The Silent Companions is deep and real. You guys know that. But now we have another book in this series, and I'm going to shout it out because it is being published in October, and if you can get your hands on it, I do think it is a great Halloween spooky read. This is House of Splinters. It's set in the same universe as The Silent Companions, but it's not exactly a prequel or a sequel. It's set in the time period between the two time periods of The Silent Companions. If you've never read The Silent Companions, your head is probably exploding by now. You have a haunting, you have strange things going on, you have a great Gothic mystery at its heart. It gives you everything that you could possibly want from a modern Gothic, creepy, macabre tale. House of Splinters, if you can get it this month, you will not be disappointed, and it will be a very satisfying Halloween read. And a book that came out this year that has one of the best moments referencing Halloween that I have read in some time is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This is a mad fairy tale horror in the modern day with various elements to it, and it is absolutely brilliant. It is ostensibly the story of a young woman who's a waitress. She's an actress. She has to leave work because of a medical emergency that is incredibly chilling. I don't want to say what it is, but it's brilliant. And she finds this young boy, this 5-year-old boy, outside of her apartment. And we realize that the boy is running from his father who can transform into a wolf. Creature, monster, thing. And suddenly the woman and the boy are on the run, trying to save him, trying to avoid all sorts of peril, and then she understands that the boy may have some hidden powers, some hidden secrets. When the Wolf Comes Home has a sequence in a Target around the time of Halloween, and Target's Halloween decorations, that is so inventive, that is so satisfying. The whole of the book I really, really enjoyed, but for a Halloween moment, it's one of the best, and it's one of the most creative uses of it. And yeah, you won't feel good about walking through Target or any kind of supermarket with its Halloween displays in there after reading that sequence. You'll be looking over your shoulder like, could it happen? I hope that intrigued you. There are so many spooky, scary books that I could keep recommending to you right now, because that's what I do, day in, day out. Of course, horror is my thing, and I can't possibly cram them all into one video, so I've tried to be economical with my choices this time around, because there's always room for more. We have a whole month of October ahead of us, and we have years ahead of us of me doing this, hopefully. Outside of the cozy genre, here's some other books that I did find that reference Halloween or autumn that might be worth putting on your list. Again, I've not read them, so I'll read them with their Goodreads rating. The Cruel Dark by B. Northick, that has 4.06 on Goodreads. In 1928, a woman with a troubled past takes a mysterious assistant's job at a crumbling estate, where her attraction to a brooding professor entwines her in secrets, folklore, and haunting shadows. As passion grows, both must confront the dangerous truths that they hide. This was a book that was recommended to me by one of my subscribers. Vibe-heavy, good Gothic romance, apparently. Check it out. Another subscriber recommendation, Autumn of the Grimoire by J.L. Vampa. This has 4.05 ratings on Goodreads. This is part of the Sisters of Solstice series, and this one focuses on Sister Autumn, Agatha. She does the bidding of a grimoire using her powers, but apparently is then forced into a royal marriage where she uncovers dark secrets, class conflict, and a prophecy that could change history. She must choose between obeying the grimoire's deadly commands or defying it to form her own destiny. People have described this as witchy, magical, and yes, autumn, it is very autumnal in its feel. I've seen a few recommendations by our Lord and Saviour Mother Horror on Instagram, and if you're not following Mother Horror on there or on the various apps, please do, because she is absolutely brilliant for giving great horror book recommendations, and is an author herself. But she was reading a lot of Shannon Morgan books, and one of them, Grimdark, caught my attention. It has 3.90 on Goodreads. When Chloe arrives at a sinister Norfolk mansion with her husband, she becomes haunted by visions of past lives, including a witch burned at a stake and entangled in a centuries-old curse tied to vengeance and lost treasure. There's a lot going on there. To survive Grimdark Hall, she must confront betrayal, reincarnation, and ghosts of history. A great synopsis, no idea of the quality of the books, but it looks solid. And a final recommendation, one that is going to creep onto my TBR very soon. It is Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews, who is the same author as Don't Let the Forest In, another book that has been recommended to me many times over. This has 4.65 on Goodreads. Evander has lived by 3 rules but since being taken in by his billionaire guardian on his huge estate. He can never leave the estate, he can never go into the gardens, and most importantly, he can never again be left alone with Byron's charming, underachieving grandson, Laurie. That last rule has been in place ever since Laurie tried to kill Evander 7 years ago, and yet somehow Evander is still obsessed with him. Evander must unravel family secrets and survive a garden that is very much alive. It said this is good for fans of Andrew Joseph White and We Have Always Lived in the Castle, one of my favourites, a tale of murder and botanical body horror. Oh yeah, that ticks a box. There you go, there is my October spooky season reading list for you. There will be room for a lot more recommendations, so please do drop in the comments if you think that there are books out there that absolutely encapsulate the feelings, the flavours, everything that we love about Halloween or about the season itself. And let me know if you'd like another guide to what we should be watching during spooky season and what we could be crafting and playing and skipping. Seasonal skipping is important. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you know when my next videos are out. Remember to download June's Journey this October using the link in my description. And stay spooky, bye-bye.